So what's going on in St. Paul?
There's no trash emergency. I'm here to debunk the trash emergency, John.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
Rolling on tap, 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 people. This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
We are back on the Wedge Live podcast. My guest is Bill Lindeke, who writes for MinnPost, who also shapes young minds at the University of Minnesota. And we're here to talk about trash crisis, trash state of emergency.
Thanks for having me, John. How are you?
I'm okay. All of us over here are used to having like city real estate debacles to fight over in Minneapolis. And so we are overjoyed to see that St. Paul is experiencing it now. You told me on Monday, and this is the reason we're talking, that you don't think people understand what's happening with this so-called trash state of emergency. So I thought I'd start by telling you my understanding of it. You tell me if I'm getting anything wrong.
Okay.
The city of St. Paul is moving to one hauler, right? None of this patchwork of trash haulers going on anymore. One trash hauler. They need a staging ground for their trucks in the face of neighbor opposition. So it's a cliche neighborhood NIMBY style fight. We don't want that near us. The city council rejected zoning approval, even though planning staff and the planning commission thought it was fine. And so now there's no place to stage the trucks. That's the story as I understand it.
Yeah, okay. You've got a lot of the basics, I think, because this goes way back to the great trash wars of 2019, which were a legitimate emergency where the city of St. Paul finally decided it was going to organize its trash collection instead of having it be a free-for-all. And that was a great decision. That's like basic city governance. And I was... it was like a lawn sign type battle. I don't know if you remember that. It seems to me like the good old days now, John. 2019. Yeah. Man, if only I could go back to fighting about trash collection. But that's what's nice about now is I guess we can pretend to do it again. I think what's really... the thing that you got a little bit wrong is to describe the opposition to the mayor's plan. The neighborhood is kind of upset about it, but I think what's really happening here is that the mayor's office didn't consult with the city council at all before moving forward with this use of the site.
Well, that sounds very reminiscent of what we are experiencing with our strong mayor here in Minneapolis. We develop a plan in the mayor's office. The people whose votes you need to go forward with it, you would think would be important stakeholders to consult through the process. Just make sure you have the votes when you come to the end, right? And they feel like at the end we don't know what's happening and we don't quite agree with this.
Yeah, actually, so what I wanted to convey to you today was that St. Paul's political situation is kind of a Minneapolis thing. A lot of people that I talk to over in Minneapolis seem to be under the impression that in St. Paul there's everything's fine, or politically everybody agrees and gets along, but actually no. And specifically, there's been a lot of animosity between the mayor's office and the city council in a very similar way to what's happening in Minneapolis these days. It's not quite as stark. So in Minneapolis, there's the city council mayor team and the city council not the mayor team, right? And those lines are really clearly drawn out. In St. Paul, it's not so simple. There's factions between people on the city council, and they're constantly changing. And there's
you
not
only
really
have 7 council members, though.
Actually, six now.
Oh, okay. But how do you have so many factions and so much bad blood when there's only 7? Does it get even meaner when the circle gets drawn tighter?
That could be. I'm actually not. I don't spend a ton of time in City Hall or talking to people there these days. I used to do that a lot more. I'm busy teaching at full time now, so I only can tell you what I've heard, but yeah, there's constantly shifting alliances, and there's no like Team Carter and Team Anti-Carter, right? There's it just depends on what's happening at any given moment. That's why actually the vote around this trash site was really interesting, because it was a unanimous city council vote to deny the zoning, the rezoning for use by the FCC Corporation.
And we should mention that Mayor Carter stepped in on Monday, I think, to declare the trash state of emergency. I didn't mention that in my lead-in.
Yeah, I thought that was a little histrionic. What's really happening is that the mayor's office and the mayor or his staff or both are trying to force the city council to do what they want. And they don't want to be told what to do. They want to have agency. And it's actually really similar to what happened at the end of last year with the budget fight. So the city council wanted to have a say in how the city budget was determined. They wanted to change things and cut a few things. And the mayor didn't want them to, and they actually got quite heated. And then there was sort of the way it was described to be, there was I don't know, administrative trick that was played by the mayor's office, where they delayed the final budget decision by 2 weeks, and therefore they ran out of time. The city council ran out of time to amend it or change it, so they had to go with one side or the other. And so, I don't know, from what I've been told, that left a lot of bad blood between the city council and the mayor's office. And no one really seems to be aware of this outside of very tight St. Paul community.
So I noticed that seemed like a brutal move. Like you don't even have the necessary legal amount of time to change this. I was surprised by that. I noticed that, but then I stopped paying attention.
So I see this current thing as a sort of a continuation of that, where there's not a lot of cooperation between the different players. And in this case, it's City Council President Rebecca Naker's ward that we're talking about here. So she's the most experienced and, I don't know, ambitious. I don't know what to say, but she's the person in the city council that's been there the longest.
Right.
And she represents downtown and the West 7th neighborhood and the West Side.
So the state of emergency sounds like you feel like it's a stunt on Mayor Carter's
Yeah,
part.
I do. I mean, the thing is that FCC has been using the current site against zoning already, and has for weeks been parking their trucks and doing something there. They're also using a quick trip that's somewhere, I'm not sure where the quick trip is located, to fuel trucks. And they need a place to go. There's probably many choices of where you could put industrial land. This specific parcel was supposed to be used for housing or to connect the West 7th neighborhood to the river. If you go down there and look at it, you can kind of see why it's an important piece of land, because a lot of the West 7th neighborhood in St. Paul doesn't have access to the Mississippi riverfront. That's got trails and parks right there. There's a freeway in the way, and there's a big bluff, and there's only a few streets where you can go down and get to the river from the community. This is one of them.
Maybe that's where I'm going wrong in my understanding of the story, which is largely coming from television news. My impression is this is zoned light industrial, and that would fit in a public works facility. The mayor is saying this is essentially a public works facility, therefore there should be no question about this going there. But you're telling me it was supposed to be housing that went on this site.
Yeah, there were different plans. There was something called the Great River Passage Master Plan. When I was on the Planning Commission, this was one of the things we approved. Years of times were spent to rethink the riverfront. And this is a parcel that was intended to be used to have development that's more walkable, that has a street grid, that uses the land in a way that's, I'd say, more future-oriented. Economic development in the city of St. Paul isn't going great. And one of the reasons is that we don't use our riverfront as an amenity. We just sort of see it as industrial, empty space. So the goal of that plan that was adopted by the city was to change that, and let's value our riverfront and use it and shift how it's conceived of. And so this is like a part of that process. So I don't think that the community is just saying we don't like traffic. I think they're saying, hey, we had this vision for how to use this land, and now the city and FCC that are working together, you know, in large part because they need someone to pick up the trash, are going to take this property that should be the keystone of this change that we wanted, and instead they're going to make it into an industrial truck facility for, you know, decades to come. And that's kind of a big pill to swallow for folks that want their neighborhood to improve in different ways, you know?
So was the underlying zoning never changed to match the plan?
That's right. There's a lot of that in St. Paul. We don't have a public... Our Department of Planning and Economic Development has a huge backlog of zoning changes that they're supposed to make.
So I wonder, was it put into the comp plan?
Technically, this plan that I'm talking about is an addendum to the comp plan. This is where it gets sort of legalistic.
Like it's like what do they call those? I forget what they call them in Minneapolis. Small area plan.
We have those too. So there's also a small area plan that's even older than the one that I was talking about. So I don't know, if you read the neighborhood's appeal, it's not wrong. At least I don't think so. There are some great areas. Like the zoning administrator and the city staff wanted this to go through, or they believed that the rezoning was correct, and the planning commission was told that, or else voted. I don't know. I wasn't at the meeting, so I'm not going to speak for the planning commission, but I don't think the neighborhood is dead wrong. They might be a little bit wrong or a little bit right, but the point is that the city council should get a say in it. And what the emergency that happened the other day is all about is trying to force the city council to change their vote and their opinion.
Was there a way forward without the state of emergency?
Yeah, I think the best case scenario for the community, the West 7th neighborhood, and I haven't talked to Council President Naker about this. I'm just sort of guessing what she's thinking, but they probably would want FCC to choose another piece of industrial land in the city. And like I wrote an article about this, and there's plenty of spots where this facility could be located, in my opinion. I'm not an expert on industrial land use, but I can think of a few where you could stick this facility and it would be good to be there, that aren't this key riverfront site, you know, that has a lot of potential.
Why is St. Paul the kind of city that fell so far behind on things like organized trash collection, alley plowing? That's a big picture question.
Yeah, that's a great question, John.
Do we not have an answer?
We don't have the capacity, I would want to say. It's like wealth, momentum, a really coherent, tightly knit group of people that work together from the business and political and maybe community perspectives that can drive change. That's been true for the whole 20th century pretty much. Exceptions to that are prove the rule in a lot of times. Like, so everything turns into a fight that's very traditional and parochial, and why it took so long to just have trash pickup occur, for example, is a mystery. I mean, people are just sort of set in their ways a lot of the time.
Because if you moved to St. Paul in the year like 2015 or so, I think you might be astonished. You'd be like, trash collection is just a thing that local governments do. And if you arrive in St. Paul as a new homeowner in 2015, before they moved to like a city service, you'd be like, what is going on? What is this city where I have to find my own trash service?
There was, that 2019 fight, there was like this whole campaign from traditionalists, let's just say, or anti-government voices that they started this movement called Hug Your Hauler, which is kind of funny. I actually interviewed my hauler a few times. It's Highland Sanitation, and they're located in the excerpt somewhere. and they do a nice job picking my trash up, but I don't have a personal relationship with the individuals in the alley. My daughter really likes garbage trucks, and so we wave to them occasionally. But most people just want the service delivered. You know, they don't need to have it be a boutique business or whatever.
Yeah. One nice part of it was like buying about as much trash collection as you need. There's a lot of people who like, I'm zero waste. I don't have trash. I'm not a person who, I don't fart and I don't produce any trash. So I don't want to have to pay for it.
I talked to some of those folks and I get it. Like, that's admirable. But, you know, we have to think collectively to live together.
Right.
And so this is a city thing.
There's also, there's some inequity in the way it was before, because you would have a lot of dumping. Like, people without trash collection, I guess, would be like, well, if I have to pay extra for this, I'm just going to dump it somewhere. And so poor neighborhoods would have trash dumped places.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've been meaning to follow up on since we started having city organized garbage, is to interview people in different neighborhoods about the vacant lot near them and whether or not couches are still abandoned there or not. But yeah, dumping along the riverfront is one place where that happened a lot.
Are you ready to talk about St. Paul Ward 4 appointment process? So Mitra Jalali resigned, and they're trying to fill the seat. I had somebody on Blue Sky. I'm going to read the question here. I want his take, Bill Lindeke's take, on the insanity in the appointment of the interim Ward 4 CM, if you can squeeze it in. The city council's dysfunction is hitting trash, but even more basic functions, even basic cordiality seems to have been lost. CM, Councilmember Jost maneuver. I don't know what that refers to.
It refers to, I wasn't there, so I don't know, but it reminded me of the vote in Minneapolis that took place on a Muslim holiday.
Okay.
Do you remember this thing where you're sort of taking advantage of
missing council members
situation? And in this case, a council member, Mitra Jalali, who is the council president, stepped down for personal reasons, leaving a vacancy in Ward 4. So people are running for that office, and there'll be an election in November. But in the meantime, someone has to get appointed to fill the seat so that the people in that part of the city are represented, and you have 7 votes on the council, so you can break a tie and things like that. And apparently they can't decide who to nominate. Usually these are just placeholders, but there are some important city votes coming up, and so my guess is that there's political factions about who should be appointed. But I don't know. I read Councilmember Jost's post on Facebook defending what happened. It was sort of an administrative maneuver where they had a nomination at the council meeting on the table, saying that they were going to nominate someone, and they hadn't decided who it was going to be. During that meeting, Council President Naker wasn't there for personal reasons, bereavement, I believe. And so there was only 5 people, and Councilmember Jost said, okay, let's put in a candidate that I like, the name of them, into this motion. So it wasn't adopted, it was just put into the motion that the name would be there. And I don't know. I don't think that went over well. It got passed on a 3-2 vote, and then Council President Naker then in the next meeting withdrew the nomination altogether. I think if they don't decide, then the mayor gets to choose who it is. It sounds like it's going to be a 3-3 vote for this, although one of the candidates, Melissa Martinez-Sones, I believe is her name, stepped down and took her name out of the running. I don't know. Sounds like a mess. I think the takeaway here is that there is a lot of disagreement and factions on the city council, and there's not a lot of cooperation in St. Paul government right now.
Yeah, that sounds rough. I wish you all the best, St. Paul, when you're filling that vacancy. It's also a mayoral election year in St. Paul. Is it just, it's going to be Mayor Carter again?
Yeah. I think that's all we need to say about that.
No
I don't think
packs.
anyone's going to run against him, so.
Any PACs, any corporate money flooding into the St. Paul
It's
mayor's race?
a real snoozer. The Minneapolis race to me is fascinating. St. Paul is going to have zero interest.
You know, Bill Lindeke, what I'm noticing about Minneapolis politics in an election year is transportation is a surprising hot button. Like, I went to a crime meeting in Uptown, and we're supposed to be hooting and hollering about crime, and people are hooting and hollering about bike lanes and medians and bus lanes, and no fucking bump outs was a cry from one of the speakers. And when I talk to some of the, like, so the mayor has a PAC affiliated with him called, one of his 2 PACs affiliated with him called All of Minneapolis. And the candidates, I've spoken to some of the candidates endorsed by that organization. And even in Ward 10, which is like the bikiest, like pro-alternative transportation ward in the city, the All of Minneapolis endorsed candidate there was very, like, had some very regressive transportation policies. And I tend to think of, like, the Transportation Action Plan as very entrenched, not going anywhere, it's status quo. But those candidates still exist. I'm just surprised at how much transportation remains a hot button.
I think it's like the last refuge of the scoundrel or something. It's people who have nothing else to offer will just complain about traffic. And I don't know. You saw, like, in the UK, right? What was his name? The guy who was the Conservative Party prime minister. He went on this whole thing about, like, the war on motorists or whatever, and then they got their butts kicked in the election. It's just like a desperate attempt to achieve relevance when you have no real ideas. But being against bump outs is like pro running over kittens or something. Right. That's indefensible to like root for traffic violence and speeds and danger on the streets of Minneapolis. So I don't know. I hope anyone who is out there demonizing bike lanes and bump outs gets roundly trounced.
I don't think people understand traffic calming. Like, this is causing me to drive slower. I'm mad at it. When the point was you were driving too fast in the first place. Like, you had to take more care to get around that was the point.
It's because of the schizophrenic nature of automobiles. Like, if you are walking down the street, you understand traffic calming very well. The second you're behind a wheel, it's just like Motor Mania from 1950 when Goofy turns from Mr. Walker to whatever the other creature was. I forgot. You know, I do it too. I'm sure. Do you drive? You don't drive though, John.
I don't drive at all.
Yeah. Well, if I'm in a bad mood and I'm late for something, I get angry driving. I try not to do it, but it happens because of the automobile, and it's I don't know. Someone needs to go out and touch grass, is I guess the point, if you're getting upset about people driving too slow.
So I don't drive, but I do accept rides from friends. And every time I accept a ride, I'm like, how did we get from this point to some place like on the other side, like on the other east side of St. Paul in like 15 minutes? It felt like we got there in no time at all. And then I go to these meetings and people are acting like we banned cars. Like, it's impossible to drive anywhere. And like the distance between how easy it is to drive and how much people feel like we have banned cars, like I can't get anywhere in my car. Just, I don't know what reality people are living in.
Me neither. It is really easy to drive and park in the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
In Minneapolis. It's really easy and quick. So if you're complaining about that, you don't have any real problems.
Bill Lindeke, thank you for coming on and clearing up the trash emergency. Apparently there is no trash emergency. Call it off.
Yeah, I think that was just sort of I don't want to, maybe it's a stunt or a PR. It's like, well, if you've got a bully pulpit as the mayor, and so that's an attempt to use it to get what you want, which is to FCC get to use this land. I hope that we see a little more flexibility from the mayor's office and cooperation in general in the city. So I don't want the city council to be dysfunctional. I don't want the mayor and the city council to be fighting about every little thing. We need to work together in St. Paul to do a lot of important stuff. Like, our downtown is literally falling apart. They're boarding up one of the central skyscrapers today, and you won't be able to use it in the skyway system. It's kind of alarming. So we really need to focus on some important stuff, not fight about small details.
I did appreciate Mayor Carter. I had the audio from Mayor Carter's speech queued up, so I want to play that for us before we leave.
Okay.
To be able to keep trash going, the continuity of trash. And we're talking about the continuity of trash, but
The continuity of trash.
I love the continuity of trash.
Thank you, Bill Lindeke.
Thanks, John. You do great work. You're, Minneapolis's pillar of the community, so I really appreciate it and happy to be on here.
Well, thank you. I always love talking to you. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thanks for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.